That's a printing press, a small one in Cuero, Texas. Prints 3,800 papers every afternoon. That's its editor, Ken Towery, veteran of Corregidor and 3 Japanese prison camps, disabled. Never worked full-time as a newsman until last year. Last November, started running a series of controversial articles on some Texas land scandals. His friends told him to stay away from it, that he would end up with rich enemies and poor friends. He stayed with it. This is a report on what happened to Editor Towery and the Cuero record since then. This was yesterday's edition.
Good evening. This is See It Now, edited and produced by the partnership of Ed Murrow and Fred Fenley, and presented each week at this time by Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America. Tonight, a report on the power of the press and the Texas land scandal. Immediately after this report from Alcoa. For the gift to be remembered, for lasting beauty and heirloom quality, give Hall Light cooking utensils, created by Wherever. The gleaming copper-colored covers always stay bright and shining. They never tarnish. They never need polishing. Hall Light utensils are made of an extra hard, thick alloy that keeps its sparkling beauty. Each Hall Light pan and each copper-colored cover has its own transparent leaf hanger, so they can be hung like pictures to create different and attractive wall arrangements. With friendly-to-food Hall Light utensils, the cooking heat spreads quickly and evenly, not only over the entire bottom of the utensil, but up the sides, too. For that gift of a lifetime, give the most beautiful and the most useful cooking utensils in America today. Hall Light utensils, designed by Wherever. Aluminum, from the ever-expanding facilities of America's foremost producer, Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America.
Good evening. This is a report on a little newspaper and a big scandal. The people of Texas voted $100 million to be used as loans for Texas veterans who wanted to buy a piece of Texas soil. They were required to pay 5% of the purchase price. The state now charges that certain corporations and individuals employed fraud, deceit, and misrepresentation in order to get veterans to sign up for the land. That land was then reassessed in order to increase its book value, and certain other manipulations occurred so that the promoters made huge profits. On the other hand, many of the transactions were legal and legitimate. We sent reporter Ed Stott and cameraman Leo Rossi down to Texas to try to find out whether the generosity of Texas voters had been abused and whether or not the veterans of that great state, some of them at least, had been victimized.
Ed, this is Cuero, Texas, population 8,000. It is also the county seat for DeWitt County, where there have been 180 indictments. Where this veterans' land scandal will end, no man can say, but the story broke here. It all started in the tiny office of the Cuero Record when its managing editor began hearing stories. Then he began writing them. In a few minutes, we will be taking you to some of the pretrial hearings, but first, meet editor Ken Towery.
I guess a newspaper man's supposed to have a lot of different ears from different people, but I'd heard a few rumors of little something that might possibly be irregularities, we might say, but at the time I had no idea that it was anything on the scale that it was, and while I was checking, actually, one of the first places I went to check on it was right here in our own press room. We had some boys here that I thought I'd put out the feelers with, and I had heard that it was mostly with the Negro veterans, and that I contacted the Negro veterans here and that worked in the plant and asked them to kind of look out for me and keep me posted on it. And a few weeks later, I found out that actually our county attorney had been checking on it for quite a while, and so whenever he had called in some of the state authorities by then, and we kind of team forces, you might say. In other words, I went over and talked to him, and And they asked me how much I knew, and I told them, and they said, well, that it was much larger than I had suspected, because at the time I thought it was possibly a local situation wherein some of the boys had been maybe rooked out of their rights to purchase land, or just paid off, say $50 for their signature on a piece of paper. But I had no idea then that it went as high as it did.
This is Wiley Cheatham, the county attorney, who worked with editor Towery and began the official investigation.
The veteran says that they come to him and, for example, want to borrow his discharge for a couple of weeks and offer him $50 if they can use his discharge. And, of course, most of these veterans are colored boys or Latin American boys that don't have any money and have never had any money. And when somebody offers them $50 or $300 for the use of their discharge and tells them everything is going to be all right, and they're prominent people that do it, and they have every reason to believe what they're being told, why, I don't think they felt they were doing anything wrong at all. Now, as far as the promoters, I've heard lots of people say, well, they're high-class people, that they ought not to be treated like what we commonly refer to as common criminals. But I'd like to say, as far as I'm concerned, they're much worse than the common criminals, because for the most part, they are highly educated, intelligent men, financially responsible. They wouldn't have to do any of this unlawful practices to make a living. I just hope that the people will demand that the investigation be carried out to the fullest, that no one be whitewashed, and demand that it be cleaned up so that we can again hold our heads up down here in Texas. I think it's a terrible disgrace to DeWitt County and the other counties involved, and to the state as a whole.
It started in Quiro, but before long many counties were involved. And Senator Jimmy Phillips investigated at the state level. In his office at Austin, he talks about some of the scandals.
A gentleman who lived on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico appears in this deal, and he purchased in 1951 two sections of land in West Texas for $20 an acre, approximately 1,300 acres of land. He sold that land to the state less than 2 years later for $200 an acre. He purchased, according to the revenue stamps in the courthouse, indicated he paid $27,600 for the land. The state paid, in 54 checks for 54 veterans, $266,778, leaving a gross of $249,178, and that only took the gentleman 60 days to do. Stranger than that is the situation where one individual operating under assumed names, and in Texas we have an assumed name statute where you can do business as John Smith if your name is Joe Blow. This individual run 3 deals through the Veterans Land Board under an assumed name, and he in these deals appeared as the seller, the purchaser, the title examiner, and the closing attorney. Now, if you can top that on any operation of any state program, I have never heard of it. And strangest thing of all, we have the Veterans Land Board, which consists of the Attorney General, the Governor of Texas, and the Land Commissioner as the members of the Veterans Land Board. Those 3 members under the statutes in Texas are equally responsible for the administration of the Veterans Land Board and for the sales to veterans and purchase from sellers for sales to veterans. And now we have a situation where, as Attorney General, he is participating in every grand jury room in the state of Texas that is investigating the operations of the Veterans Land Board, of which he is a member. And you have the unusual situation where the investigator, or the one subject to investigation, is doing the investigation.
Governor Allen Shivers is one of the 3 members of the Veterans Land Board. While reporter Scott was in Austin, he asked for an interview, but Governor Shivers was unavailable. Bascom Giles, another member of the Land Board, until his resignation last January, had been land commissioner of the state of Texas for 8 terms. On March 5th, he was indicted for conspiracy to commit theft. There have been 8 charges since then. He is out on bond awaiting trial. In addition to Giles, there are 269 indictments in 7 counties, and the criminal cases are pending. But some of the pre-trial hearings in the civil cases have already begun. Several of the veterans were subpoenaed to appear at this tomato shed. Prosecutor Wiley Cheatham advised them that it was not to their best interest to go out and look at the land, which they had never seen. Finally, hearings were held last week in the Yoakum City Hall, a town adjacent to Cuero. This is Sheriff Cutter Deep, who also worked on the case and who urged the veterans not to go out to their land. The lawyers for the defendants, the land promoters, sit at the left of the table.
I'd say just assume that you're right and that the veterans didn't know anything at all about the land that they're buying. Do you think it's in their best interest that they not find out anything about it before they give it up?
They've already given the thing up.
Well, that's another legal conclusion, isn't it, Mr. D?
My personal opinion, yes, sir.
Well, that's your personal opinion. Of course, the law questions will have to be decided by the judge. I'm just asking you, assuming that they haven't...
Let's use common sense.
All right, then. Use common sense.
Do you know that Mr. Kick the Dog did not want the land in the first place? He wanted something for nothing, and he was promised that by the land promoters.
Well, we just assume that's true. We just assume that he was told that he was going to be given a piece of land, but the facts are that instead of being given to him, that the state of Texas was selling it to him. Now, before he makes up his mind that he's going to give up that property, do you know of any reason why he shouldn't have the benefit of seeing that land and seeing whether he got his money's worth?
No.
All right. And you know that that was the purpose of the trip to Crystal City, do you not?
What do you think?
I know. Have you seen the land?
No, sir.
Do you know what the land's worth?
I've heard enough about it.
Well, what have you heard about it, Mr. D? About the land?
A good billy goat couldn't make a living off of it.
But you don't really honestly know what kind of land Walter Kirkendall has down there in Zavala County, do you?
That's right.
And if I told you that it was land that was very productive land and was well worth the money, you wouldn't believe that, would you?
I'm afraid it wouldn't, friend.
Does it look like that perhaps the state of Texas or somebody's been defrauded?
Very much.
That's the attorney for the state on the right.
Now, your interest is, as a law enforcement officer, trying to protect the peace and to protect the rights of the state of Texas. Is that correct?
That's right.
When you found out that they were taking these poor boys, most of whom have no education whatsoever, and those that do have education, very limited education, and for a paltry $10 or $12 or $14, they had taken away from them what veterans' rights were supposed to be given to them, and then herded into a warehouse to have their depositions taken in the very spot where they were defrauded from, you thought there might be something wrong, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I thought it was crooked, to be honestly frank with you.
Well, I think you are to be congratulated, and I thank you very much.
The sheriff and Cheatham told the veterans that they had to answer the subpoena to the city hall, and they did. Next witness, Sylvester Webb. He owns land he has never seen.
Heard about it.
And
there was
contact with him. I first heard about it. Well, he was there to talk to me.
There were 2 men, a white man and a colored man.
fella. He gave me a paper, and I just slightly, I don't even remember what I read on there. I just slightly looked over it, and
Well, now,
he gave me a pencil.
he asked you if you were a veteran. You said yes. And if you had an honorable discharge, and you said yes. He asked you if you wanted to sign up for some of that veteran's land, and what did you say?
Well, I looked at the paper. He gave me a paper, some kind of sheet, and I looked at it.
Yeah.
But I didn't just slightly look over some words. I don't hardly remember what was on there.
Let's see now. He handed you some papers, and you
I
glanced
looked
at
at
it.
Yes.
And, well, then, did you ask him what it was all about? How you went about getting this land?
I asked him, I ain't buying no land. I said, what you got to do about this? Do you have to buy the land? He said, no.
Said no. Said that they had, did he say that they had a plan worked out where no money had to come out of your pocket. Is that about it?
Yes.
Wouldn't have to be a cent out of your pocket.
I won't do it.
For 3 years, it wouldn't have to be a cent.
That's right.
Now tell me that again.
He said for 3 years you don't have to pay. For 3 years you lease the land, and you get some money or something out of the land. So after 3 years, where the land belongs to you.
Now, he said after 3 years did he say something like this, that after 3 years you could sell the land if you wanted to, it belonged to you, and you could do with it what you wanted to after 3 years, after the lease was over?
Yes.
Now, tell me that again.
He said after 3 years, the land would be yours. You could sell it or either lease it.
Or lease it again.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
At leasing, is that the same thing as renting?
I don't understand that. Well, I don't think so. I beg your pardon. I don't think so.
But you knew it as a lease.
Yes.
You said a lease.
Yes.
Lieutenant Wintergarden, Exhibit 22, Webb, reads, Veterans Land Board of the State of Texas, Austin, Texas. Affidavit of possession. I, the undersigned veteran purchaser of the land fully described in deed from Wintergarden Development Company to Veterans Land Board of the State of Texas, have been given and have taken possession of said land. There is no one in possession claiming adversely to me. I'll read that last line again. There is no one in possession claiming adversely to me. Sylvester, you look at that paper there. Take a look at it.
I'll tell you how much of a reader.
You can read Sylvester Webb up
Yeah, I
there
can
at
read
the top.
Sylvester Webb.
Can you read what's right underneath that line?
What is that?
What's that?
And I don't know what that word is.
My writing's pretty bad. Was this the paper that you signed on Front Street back in 1952? You signed up just one paper that day, I suppose.
Yes.
Is that correct? You wanted to do what the other boys were doing.
Well, I did, so they signed up, and I did too, so that's as I remember, you know.
And if you signed up like the other boys were doing and got you some veterans land, well, that was all right with you, wasn't it?
I probably so.
But you wouldn't feel bad if you got some land.
I wouldn't feel bad.
Now, the truth of the matter is, Sylvester, you didn't go into all details. You didn't even read those contracts, did you?
It sure is.
You figured it was all right and you were satisfied.
That's it.
You had a chance, if you wanted to, you had a chance to go and read those papers, didn't you?
Sure, but
You didn't tell him. You don't think that Shorty Robinson, that's a member of your own race, the man that you've known for years and years and years around here, would have refused to let you take those papers and have them read or read them yourself if you'd asked him to. You don't think Shorty'd do you that way, do you?
Shorty could have done it away. All he wanted money too.
Well, I understand that. He wanted money. You know, Shorty was working for wages, just like you work for wages. You understand that.
Sure.
But you didn't ask Shorty. You didn't say, Shorty, I want to take these papers off here and study them a bit, did you?
No.
If you'd wanted to, you'd ask him, wouldn't you?
Shorty didn't have no papers when I seen him.
Well, did you ask the other man? You were satisfied. And you were satisfied, weren't you, Sylvester? Up until all this trouble came up about it. You were satisfied, weren't you?
Yeah, I wasn't worried.
You wasn't worried until... And you haven't gone out to anybody and tried to stir up any trouble about this, have you?
No.
You were just going along. Now, Sylvester, you understand the down payments, don't you?
Yes.
You purchased, you own a car?
No.
Did you ever purchase anything on the installment plan?
No, I have, but my wife have. I don't find question nothing. I don't owe nobody.
They're pretty bad about it, aren't they? Well, you understand, if you pay so much on the principal, you don't owe as much.
That's right.
So if you owed $7,200 to start with, and you paid $1,200, round number, $1,200, well then at the end of the year, you'd only owe $6,000. That's right, isn't it? Because you paid $1,200, you owed $7,200, so 1,200 and 6,000 be $7,200. You understand that, don't you?
In the beginning, only Towery wrote these stories, and only the Quiro Record carried them. But now it is a major Texas story in every newspaper. But it was the small press in Quiro that had the power to start it.
This trial and the tribulations that I'm sure you went through have any influence on your feeling in this particular story?
I just believe that when a man takes on a position of trust in government, that he should be completely above reproach. I don't know, and I know we're all human and we all have errors, but when a man takes a position of influence in government, in other words, he comes before the people and asks for their support and their help in going into office, and then after he's in there, if he goes ahead and violates the confidence that the people have put in him, why, to me, it's pretty bad. It's pretty low, actually. In fact, like I said before, I can't think of anything that's worse except maybe some newspaper people that won't tell the truth, which unfortunately we have a few. In other words, I'm not afraid, actually, of America ever being defeated from without its boundaries, near so much as I am being defeated from within, simply because people like, well, the ones that we've gotten mixed up in it now, and thousands more that haven't been named, I don't say in this particular thing, but other things just like it, when it is brought out or when it's found out, then people lose so much faith in them or in the government in general that they become disgusted and disheartened and become prey for communism or any other ism that happens to be come along at that particular time. So I think that aside from the fact that we're just in here trying to report news stories and show the people what's going on, that underneath it has a real reason for being like that, because of the fact that it will possibly awaken the people to become a little more interested in good government and to see what happens when they are not interested in it. And in other words, the politicians always come before us and say, look at me, I'm the best, and we never go in and check on their past or their qualifications or this or that, and we just take their word for it. Well, I don't know. It's taught me a lot.
It taught us something, too. Our crew decided to spend another day in his office just in case something should happen. And it did. We'll go back to Texas immediately after this word from Alcoa, the Aluminum Company of America.
Today, highways all over the country are becoming safer, and engineers are saving taxpayers' money through the use of signs and railings made of Alcoa aluminum. Here on the new Ohio Turnpike is the nation's largest installation of these aluminum highway bridge railings, enough to run for almost 40 miles. Easy to erect and long-lasting, these economical aluminum railings do not need to be painted. Many miles of these beautiful railings are now in use throughout the country. Texas, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Kentucky, Washington, D.C. No matter where they're used or what the weather, these corrosion-resistant Alcoa aluminum railings will not need maintenance. The Ohio Turnpike will also be equipped with 2,442 light but strong Alcoa aluminum highway signs. Through the use of aluminum panels, signs of any desired size can be erected quickly and easily. When assembled with aluminum fasteners, these signs will never rust, stain, or streak. The message they carry is always legible. These signs last longer and save money. Yes, each year, highway engineers are saving tens of thousands of dollars through the use of bridge railings and signs made of aluminum. The Aluminum by Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America.
Kenneth Towery is one managing editor who takes all incoming calls. He has to. He is 1/3 of the entire editorial staff of the Record. Yesterday, May 2nd, the phone rang on Towery's desk. It was the city desk of the Houston Post calling. They wanted to know if Towery knew he had just won a Pulitzer Prize for journalism.
Yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. How are you, Jim? Oh, is that right? Oh, good. I mean, sure enough. You're not joking, are you? Huh? Oh, well, the world of wonders never ceases. I don't hardly believe it, feller. I think you're pulling my leg. Oh, for goodness sakes. Oh, well, what do you mean? You think I got it, then? Oh, for goodness sakes. Well, oh, my. Just a minute. What's that? I tell you, I'm not satisfied yet, and I won't be till there's a couple more indictments. But I mean, the investigation, well, I was nervous. I can't hardly talk, but I mean, the investigation, I believe, is still has a little way to go yet, and I don't think that, well, let's put it this way, I don't think justice is going to be done unless there's at least 2 more indictments. I'd hate to say which ones, I mean, I wouldn't say which ones I thought they ought to be, but down here in this country, we got our ideas anyhow. But, oh, shucks, feller, I still think that don't sound right to me. Well, I sure do think it an awful lot. I really do. Goodness, I don't know. Well, shucks, I still... Well, I mean, it's just a long story, but I ran up against a brick wall everywhere I went, almost, and then finally I found out that Cheatham was working on it and had been working on it for many months, and actually he's the one that deserves all the credit, not me. Good gracious, all I did was just kind of go along and do the best I could. I do believe that by bringing it out to the public, and I mean you boys too up there at the Post and all over the country are the ones to get the credit for it, because our little old voice down here couldn't have been heard very far if the big papers hadn't picked it up and ran with the ball. Well, I sure do thank you an awful lot for calling, and I hope someday I'll be able to meet you in person, and thank you a lot for the call. Okay, well, bye-bye.
As the word about the $1,000 Pulitzer Award got round, the townspeople came in to congratulate Towery. First, there was his partner in the fight, County Attorney Wiley Cheatham.
Just the start of a great career.
Well, thank you a lot, Wiley. Thank you again, boy. Goodness gracious. I got it right.
And Sheriff Cutter Deeks.
You really deserve it.
Well, I don't know. Thank you, yeah. Thank you. Oh, folks, it's mighty fine, I'll tell you for sure. Oh,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It was awful nice, boy. Awful fun.
Thank you. Hello, Harry. Hey, we made it.
And Towery's boss, the Record's publisher, Jack Howardson.
Well, I'm proud of you, both.
Mrs. Ken Towery, the editor's wife.
Well, we made it.
Don't rush off.
No, good.
Thank you. I'm proud of you.
Well, I'm proud of you, gal.
3,800 isn't much circulation, not much power as newspapers are generally measured. But courage and power are not always found in the same package. There are newspapers and radio and television networks with much greater circulation and much more potential power than the Quiro Record. The Pulitzer Committee merely called attention to courage, perhaps with the hope that it might be contagious. Good night and good luck from Al Cohen.